I remember sitting in a quiet lobby once, waiting for a meeting that already felt too heavy for the day. The sunlight slipped through the tall glass windows, scattering across the floor like threads of gold unraveling from a distant sky. Everything around me buzzed with the usual noise, phones ringing, people pacing, small talk floating like static. But inside me, something felt still, almost paused. It was in that strange calm that I came across a clip of Steve Harvey speaking with that familiar boldness of his, saying something about Islam that pressed its thumb right against my chest. I didn't expect the moment to stay with me, but it did, like a seed finding its soil. It wasn't the celebrity aspect that struck me. It was the sincerity. The way he spoke about how Islam honored women long before the world decided to make it a campaign. He said it with conviction, almost relief, as if he had stumbled on a truth that deserved more than applause. It deserved a second look. And I felt something stir in me, a curiosity that didn't come gently. It arrived like a knock in the night that refuses to be ignored. I found myself wondering why a man with his platform would speak so boldly, especially about a religion people love to misunderstand. What did he see? What did he learn? What truth was too real for him to keep quiet about? Those questions didn't fade. They followed me out of that lobby, into my car, into the rest of my week. Every now and then, the same thought would whisper across my mind. What did Islam actually say about women before the world twisted its narrative? That whisper grew louder the day I finally sat down with a cup of tea and allowed myself to ask the one question I had avoided for years. What if the story I'd been told about Islam wasn't the full story at all? What if respect, dignity, rights, honor, things the world claims it invented recently, were already carved into its foundations 14 centuries ago? The deeper I looked, the more I felt my assumptions slowly disintegrate. It was like wiping dust off an old mirror and seeing a reflection that felt strangely new. I learned that in the time when women were buried alive, literally, not metaphorically, Islam declared their right to live, to be honored, to be protected. I learned that when societies treated women like currency, Islam gave them inheritance, ownership, economic independence, and spiritual equality. I learned that the Quran didn't speak to women as afterthoughts. It addressed them directly, compassionately, deliberately. I wasn't prepared for the emotional weight of that realization. There was something almost cinematic about discovering a truth that had been waiting patiently in history while the world wrote its own version. The idea that a faith had established dignity for women when the rest of the world was still deciding if they were human. It didn't just surprise me, it humbled me. And while I'm not Muslim, the sincerity of that teaching pressed itself against my heart in a way I didn't expect. It felt like walking into a room you didn't know you needed until you stood inside it. A room filled with clarity, balance, and a calm sense of justice. I kept revisiting the words Steve Harvey said, not because they were new, but because of the courage it takes to mention Islam in a way that honors it. He spoke about how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, elevated women's status at a time when the world was drowning in its own ignorance. He spoke about how a woman's comfort, her dignity, her value were woven into the teachings like threads the world could never quite cut. His voice carried the tone of someone who didn't just learn a fact, he encountered a truth. And that truth moved me in ways I couldn't explain to anyone around me. I found myself revisiting that era in my mind. The heat of the desert, the coarse dust swirling in the wind, a world building itself slowly, painfully. And in the middle of it, a message was revealed that spoke directly to the hearts of daughters, mothers, wives, and sisters. A message that said, your worth is not up for debate. It is defined, it is honored, and it is protected. How do you ignore something like that? The more I reflected on it, the more I realized how desperately our modern world still needs that message. Here we are, centuries later, pretending to be pioneers of women's empowerment, while Islam established principles that some countries only recognize in the last few decades. We shout slogans about equality, yet the women carrying the weight of society are still fighting invisible wars. Wars against expectations, objectification, exhaustion, and the fear of never being enough. But Islam's teaching whispers something different, something gentler, something firm without being harsh. It says, a woman is not an ornament. She is not a commodity. She is a trust, a responsibility, a soul with rights that must be guarded. And somehow, even from the outside looking in, that truth brought me a kind of unexpected peace. I started thinking of the women I've known in my life, my mother, my sisters, friends who never spoke of their struggles because the world expects them to carry everything quietly. I thought about the weight they hold in their backs, their hearts, their calendars, and their silence. And I couldn't help but imagine what it would look like if every society treated them with the same dignity Islam carved into its teachings from the beginning. I remember one afternoon sitting on a balcony as the sky dimmed into a soft gray, feeling the cool breeze against my face. My mind kept drifting to this image of a woman standing at the edge of a river, strong, steady, unshakable. The world might not always see her strength, but the current beneath her feet knows it. That's what Islam's teachings felt like to me. A current, a force, a quiet, unwavering truth that lifted the unseen, the unspoken, the underestimated. And I found one line echoing through my thoughts. Respect isn't something you grant a woman when the world demands it. It's something you give her because God already did. That became an anchor in my reflections, a reminder that honor is not a trend. It's a principle, a divine one. I began noticing these small reflections appearing in my daily life. A mother holding her child at a store, her patience stretched thin, yet her love unfaltering. A young woman studying late into the night, chasing dreams she isn't always encouraged to pursue. A grandmother whispering prayers over her family, her voice soft yet powerful enough to shape generations. Each of them carried a quiet dignity that felt mirrored in the teachings I had discovered. The contrast became impossible to ignore. This world says a woman must prove her worth. Islam teaches her worth was established by God Himself. This world says a woman is strong when she acts like steel. Islam teaches her strength can look like tenderness, grace, and resilience. This world says empowerment is loud. Islam teaches it can be quiet, grounded, and deeply spiritual. With every passing day, my respect for this tradition grew, not because it was foreign, but because it felt universally human. I found myself imagining our modern world through the lens of those teachings, what homes would feel like, what marriages would look like, what daughters would grow into if that level of honor and mercy was upheld. It wasn't just an idea. It felt like a form of healing, not just for women, but for the entire society that depends on them. One night, as I sat in the half-light of my living room, I whispered a thought I had never spoken aloud before. Maybe honoring women the way Islam teaches isn't only a religious principle, it's a pathway to restoring balance in a world that's lost its center. The more I sat with that feeling, the more I realized that learning from a faith doesn't require belonging to it. Wisdom doesn't ask for your membership, it invites your humility, and that humility softened something in me. It made me grateful for a revelation given long before I ever existed, yet capable of shaping the way I see humanity today. I don't claim to understand the depth of this faith. I don't pretend to feel what Muslims feel when they hear these teachings, but I do know this: when a truth resonates, it doesn't need translation. It finds its way into the human heart on its own terms. And maybe that's why Steve Harvey's words stayed with me, not because he was preaching, but because he recognized a beauty that the world often overlooks, a beauty woven into a religion people misunderstand far too easily, yet one that holds a timeless reverence for the strength, the softness, and the sacredness of women. So here I am now, sitting with a deeper sense of gratitude for a faith I'm not part of, yet one that continues to teach me from afar, teach me about dignity, about balance, about what it truly means to honor another human being. And as I breathe in the quiet of this moment, One final thought drifts through me like a gentle tide. Some truths don't need to belong to you for you to be shaped by them. Islam's honoring of women is one of those truths, and I carry it with me now, like a lantern lit in the dusk, guiding me toward a gentler, wiser way of seeing the world. When the world forgets what a woman deserves, I'll remember. When society gets loud with its confusion, I'll hold on to the clarity I found. When false narratives drown the truth, I'll let the truth speak for itself. As the last light fades from the sky, I'm left with a kind of stillness I can't fully describe. A stillness that feels like respect, like reverence, like peace gently settling into the spaces we often overlook. And in that quiet, I understand something simple, profound, and unforgettable. A woman honored by God never needed the world's permission to stand tall.